Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with us. His name is Christopher Naoki Lee. Christopher is a Los Angeles native with a BFA in theater from New York University and has been working in the industry for nearly 25 years, recently wrapping up a season-long arc as Ken Yudohara on the critically acclaimed AMC series The Tier. He's recurred on Amazon's Too Old to Die Young and Jean-Claude Van Johnson, Apple TV's Mythic Quest, among others. Chris has written and directed digital series to pilots, but his feature film directorial debut, Dinner Party, is for more personal. He wanted to tell the story of a group of diverse friends, not dissimilar to his experience, that have to grapple with the changing of their current times, where issues of race, gender equality, classism have come to the forefront of the modern conversation. His aim for this film is to help facilitate that dialogue even further, showing that there is always more than one side to a story, and that we have become a beacon of positive change if we so choose to be. As a person of color, it's an honor for Chris Naoki Lee to depict such a diverse ensemble on screen with these incredible collaborators on Dinner Party. It truly takes a village. Christopher, welcome to the show.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me, both of y'all. I'm so excited to be here.
Of course, that is an amazing introduction. And the movie Dinner Party, I just want to hop right into it, right?
Let's do
Because
it. Let's do it. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, when Maggie was bringing out the intro, I feel like this movie could have come at a better time, right? We're
Mm,
coming at a
mhm.
time where we're recognizing our cultural heritage, how to find allyships, how to find partnerships. And I just want to have you talk about the movie and how it related to your upbringing. What and how did you get inspired to create this?
Yeah. Ooh, lots to unpack there, Brian, but I'm gonna do my best here. I would say yes, Dinner Party has a lot of shades of kind of my own life, of my a lot of influences that have come from that direction, along with my co-writer Daniel Weaver as well. And when we put our heads together, we came up with this story. And I first reached out to him when I had this idea. It was all happening during the times when back in 2018 there was a very divisive hearing that was happening in America. Y'all might have heard about it. It was when it was during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, and it was fairly divisive, across like all state of America. And although I had a very specific point of view on that, that was something that was a bit of an impetus in some ways, where there was so much dialogue happening about it. And at the same time, I was thinking about this story that I wanted to tell about all my childhood friends that I grew up with a very simple log line. It's funny, movies can sometimes, or ideas can happen from a character, it can happen from a line, it can happen from a theme, it can happen from like a story beat. For me, it started from a simple pitch, like a log line pitch, which was, if you met your childhood friends today, would you still fuck with them? And that was, to me, was like so simple because I grew up in this little small, and we just talked about it, this small little town outside of LA called Calabasas, a very different version of that city way back in the day where I grew up in. But still, it was a very predominantly more white or white passing community. So a lot of my friends, as diverse as they were, but it also reflected the demographic that was, of Calabasas. So, my own upbringing certainly shaped how I viewed race, how I viewed classism and sexism, all of it, right? And not to mention that the time that I grew up 20, 30 years ago is a far different time than the time that younger people are growing up today, right? The things that they can talk about, the access of information and technology that they have that we didn't have in those times. So all that to say, we were very different people back in those days. So what happens if you meet up today for like a reunion dinner, and all these things are happening? How do you have that conversation? But then on top of that, we added in this very specific story element, which was, what happens if an inappropriate act, something that is black and white wrong, done to one of your female friends, and then you have to talk about it in real time. So versus, like, you look at something on TV, you look at something that's happening like a court case versus something that's happening in your own tribe. And how do you have that dialogue? How do you have that discourse? That was, to me, the most engaging thing about this film. It kind of feels and reads like a play, and I give such a shout out to my actors, to my crew. We shot this film in 4 days. I can't stress this one enough. It was kind of crazy to shoot it in 4 days, but I couldn't have done it without stronger actors or a cast like that. They stepped up to the plate, and I'm so humbled to even just be here and talking about it, because it's from their fruits of labor that I get to be here and talk about this great accomplishment that we did. And ultimately hoping that, kind of like your reaction, Brian, was it can incite something. It can incite just a form of dialogue that doesn't feel too heavy-handed, but makes you want to be like, hey, should we just talk about that for just a second of what we just watched? And if you can do that, then I'm grateful.
Wow. There's a lot of stuff to sort of break down, digest there. The first thing is 4 days. That is pretty crazy.
Oh gosh, I want to tell. Yeah,
goodness.
I was. Shout out to Imani, my partner. She held it down for me. She was also co-producer on the film. But yeah, I definitely broke down like 1 or 2 times right before shooting, because it was very, very stressful. And like all things, right, they always just come together in the very end, and you just don't know if it's going to. And it did. And stressful as hell. But again, I have to say that if it wasn't for those actors, if it wasn't for that crew, I don't think it was possible.
I honestly can't even imagine what kind of stress that you all went through to make this happen, right? And I think the hardest part is like 4 days can communicate like a vision for what you wanted. It was like it must have been very extremely difficult. And this is just all like my guess, right? Because I'm not really familiar with the film industry.
Right.
How did you cast these members for your movie? Did you talk about their childhood experience? Did you talk about their personal experience? What was that one thing where you're like, they had to be in the script?
Oh, great question. I would say that I had about half of the cast already in my mind when I was writing it. So that was helpful. I have a lot of great friends who are actors who are phenomenal at what they do. They're on different shows or different films right now. And, I was just basically crossing my fingers that after I finished writing it, that I can pass it to them and say, hey, I would love for you to do this because I was thinking about you for it. Unfortunately, everyone that I did pass it to was 100% down, and they all took very significant pay cuts because it's a very low indie budget film, but they resonated with that project. So that was so humbling. I was super grateful for that. But there were about, I would say, 3 to 4 other roles that we didn't necessarily have people ready to go. Right. So we certainly were looking for the right people. And thankfully, again, I have a really great people within the network. A great example is my friend Mayank. He is a casting director, but I also know that he's a great actor. So we were able to get him for the character of Rish. But for the character of Jen, who plays his girlfriend in the film, it was really tough for us to find because we didn't have someone in our Rolodex that we can just immediately reach out to. We knew that if we went through specific channels like an agent or a manager, it gets a little bit trickier because it's just more hoops. You just have to jump through more hoops. Like, they don't know me. They're going to be like, hey, you're going to read for a film that is of lower budget. Do you sure you want to do that? There's more ears, like there's more people talking into your ear, right? So it's better if we can get it directly to the source. And Mayank had a great connection with this actor named Qasem Muhammad, and passed it along to her, and she was 100. We had a conversation. She was interested. She was down. We, again, like you said, we had that talk prior to, and then we did like a table read essentially, and that kind of locked everything in. But like those sort of situations happened where I had to sort of trust another person to essentially find that right connection, right? And in some ways we can't be too picky about it either, because it is an indie film, it is low budget. It's not like we can go off and start asking for like Priyanka Chopra or anything and be like, hey, do you want to just hop into this? So we understood that we had some limitations and challenges, but gosh, we were so fortunate. Like even Costa, I just saw her like last week, and I was so excited to get her just because she's such a phenomenal actor. And we had good conversations during the rehearsal process. Like, she's the one actor who is American but plays British, so she was even talking about her accent and stuff, and just even that character development was something that was very, very important to us. And long story short, already too late, it's a little long, I know, but essentially, we wanted to make sure that we gave enough agency and authenticity to all the actors playing these roles, because straight up, it's 2 straight people writing a film about all these diverse perspectives and about sexual harassment. You need to make sure that we need to make sure we're doing our due diligence with everybody involved that have diverse point of views, that it is feeling as authentic as possible, full stop. So that was something for us that was really, really important. And we're so happy that the actors all came in with, they had ideas of how they wanted to approach the characters, but it still fell in line with the vision of the film. And, I had to trust them so much because, like we just said, 4 days, simply put, you don't get a lot of coverage or a lot of takes in 4 days. You pretty much get 1 or 2 on one coverage. So you got to just trust that what you're doing in that time is going to be as good as we can hope it can be. That's again, a kudos and a testament to them.
Yeah, definitely kudos to you guys. That is not an easy feat. And, listening to input and trying to incorporate that back into the vision, you basically started a company IPO in 4 days to basically break it down for our business people listening to the podcast, So
right,
shout out to you.
Right. No, yeah, no, and it's funny that all the the business stuff too, it's truly attractive to me. I've gotten way more into sort of the business side of things the older that I've gotten. I came into this business very wide-eyed, very green, and just want to do it for the love of it. And because of sort of the times, back in my 20s when someone like me wasn't being casted as much, I had to take a pretty hard break. But I then reapproached it about 4 to 5 years later from a very specific business mentality. Like, I'm a product that I'm selling, right? And I don't want to make it sound so superficial right now, but it's like there's a part of you that has to let go of some of that ego as an artist, right? Because from a business point of view, it's business, right? It's X's and O's. You're just trying to figure out how to get that dollar value of how do you stay in the black. It's like the same thing with the business of you as an actor, as an artist, as a storyteller, as a writer, as a director, and as a producer. There's all those avenues to think about. And I've really, really gotten into the weeds of that over the last, 5 to 6 years, because it's really important, especially for someone as BIPOC as myself, to be in a position to help facilitate more work for other people like myself in the future too.
I love that. And I love that you're also mentioning all the different diverse cultural backgrounds that you're trying to incorporate into this movie, which is really, really important during this time, right? Like all about, bringing more representation to minority groups. And I just wanted to take a step back. Like, I love the plot of this because I think you start having people talk about it as well. Because like, just personally thinking about it, like if I were to, hang out with the people that I met back then, I feel like it's a lot harder to talk about like things in terms of like politics and ethics and stuff like that. It's easy to talk about that stuff for people that you meet in this day, right? Because that's all that's going on right now. But for people that you've met like a long time ago, like in elementary school, you never really talk about that with them when you were growing up. So like, if you were to see them today in this day and age, like, would you still talk about, politics? How would you approach those conversations with them? So I think you start having people talk about that, right? And I know you mentioned that you were trying to partner up with like companies and advocacy groups to push for social change and diverse representation. So like, I want to know how you're planning to do that, and what do you hope for viewers to take away from this movie Dinner Party?
Yeah, that's a great question, Maggie. So much there. I want to say the first thing is the theme of this. I don't take the theme of this film lightly, not just from the diverse aspect, but from the avenue of sexual, harassment, sexual assault, because that to me is, that's the real backbone of the film in a lot of ways, right? And those conversations that we have. So the first thing when it comes to advocacy groups and places that we love to partner up with is specifically in that realm, right? We want to make sure that, we're putting out a film that, not to saying honoring, but not to say that we're completely disregarding, right? But specifically for survivors as well, like for a story where, again, 2 straight male are talking about a story about sexual assault. I 100% know how that can come across without the proper kind of context. So for us, even myself as a producer, that's why bringing on Imani as a co-producer to help inject certain specific points of views very early on in the scripting process. We do our very first table read draft with all of our actors, and we ask them to stick around for 15 minutes, but they end up sticking around for 2.5 hours afterwards to talk about the film and give us their insights and their stories that we took and implemented into the second draft of our film, right? So same kind of way, in the way that we would want to push the film outward, through distribution, but through partnering, is with groups that can help us in a way that like puts this on a platform that also says that, hey, we're trying to do this the best way and the right way as possible. And there's no real right way, honestly. It's all perception and it's all like how you view it. But to me, that's really important, just because I do understand as a consumer how it could come off. So I want to make sure that, hey, we're doing everything we possibly can. Even I just mentioned Kosser. She runs an advocacy groups, and I believe it's called Shift the Culture, I believe. And there are people that we've talked to as well, just regarding how can we potentially partner with you when it comes to advocating for part of the film, but as long as it makes sense to both of our visions, right? Same thing if it comes to Asian Hustle Network or other Asian American type of platforms that are out there that's pushing for stories that isn't necessarily Asian, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like it's an American story at the end of the day. It just happens to have all the diverse cultures that you might see in America. So that's why that was another thing where it's not like we're making race a thing of the film. It just happened to be a lot of the conversation because you're looking at, that's how my conversations tend to go, and just naturally at dinner parties or hanging out at a bar with a friend, it just naturally comes up. So being able to partner up with those kinds of groups, whether it's Asian or South Asian or, a Black organization groups, like those would be ones that we would love to target and work with. But again, so as long as it works for the both of us in the best way, right? There's always going to be a little give and take, but I wanted to approach this film as honestly as I could and as authentically as I could, but still I'm not denouncing the fact that it's coming from one point of view. From as a director, it's my point of view, so I do own that and I understand that as well. So it might not be for everybody, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we still have to give you a lot of credit because this speaks volume to who you are as a person. And I guess the conversation that you brought up just now, it's like it's not an easy conversation to have, right? Because everyone will have different takes on this and different opinions. I guess my question is like, how do you navigate these conversations internally? Because I'm pretty sure like here's social media, right? We're gonna see a lot of heated debates about race and people blaming and taking credit and all that stuff. Like to bring that into a movie, right? And with this movie, obviously there's gonna be one big takeaway that we all go away and be like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Like, how do you navigate these conversations internally? Because I'm pretty sure that some of the stuff that you spoke about with your own casting team and your script writer and yourself, it's like it can get pretty heated for so long. Like basically, the way I see it, it's like you're a politician that found a solution to this race problem. That's the way I see it, to be honest. So I have to ask you a lot of questions on that because that's a hard topic.
Internally, now that's a piece of my mind that you got to see. You know what I'm saying? Just the back and forth that my mind is kind of always going through. Because even the person who plays Miles, Charles, who's a phenomenal actor, and his point of view, right? We could sort of say the antagonist, right, in the film. But there's certain things that he might say that me as objectively as I possibly can be like, well, I guess I kind of get that, So I try to approach it from that way too. Now, don't get me wrong. These people may have sort of a gray point of view on some of the nuanced conversations they're having because we don't live in a black and white world, but the act, right? The actual act of the sexual harassment, that's wrong. Black and white, full stop. That is an absolute wrong thing to do. But when it comes to then speculating about something that's happening on TV, when it's speculating about race and how it's affecting the country, all of that is just based on nuanced conversation, right? Conversations that I've had a lot with a lot of different friends. Perfect example is, again, growing up with friends who, who don't look like me, but we're still great friends and we can have conversations. But even one of those really subtle, like racist statements that was made in the film actually happened to me in real life, and to a point where you're cringing and being like, that couldn't have possibly happened. But us three sitting here right now can be like, you'd be surprised at the things that shit's been said to us, just very microaggressively, and stuff that we just complicitly let go of, particularly when we were younger, because during that time, we might have been a little bit more okay. So I think that, to better answer your question here through this word salad that I'm giving you, is I noticed that my love of film started very, very early on, but my knowledge of the world was still so small at that time. And it's just so happening that right now in my life, both of them are coalescing at the same time, right? My love for film and my strength of doing it, still wanting to get way better because I can get way better at it. But then also same thing with knowledge. I can definitely know a lot more, but I'm starting to understand. And I say starting, like, from years ago, from like 4 to 5, 6 years ago, of understanding how the world is shaped, right? And how we're being treated, and how we need to kind of push that conversation through how I know the best that I can, which is art, through film, through writing, through acting, and through bringing the best people that I know involved to tell the story. Because like you said, in the end, the hope is that you can finish the film and you look at Maggie and be like, so which one do you feel like you kind of resonate with? Because I do feel like there's a character that anybody can resonate with in this film. It's not perfectly diverse. I don't have all the cultures out there. That would be just impossible. And pretty much you're just it's more platitude by that point. So you shouldn't be doing it anyway. So it's like, I wanted to find that right balance that allowed us to have those conversations first in a very more intimate and open and okay way, but then also in a perhaps more heated and boiled up and like, I can't fucking hold back my anger kind of a way, because we are fed up. And there's plenty of that shit in our world right now that we can say exactly that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that you kind of painted that picture for us too, because I think that goes for anything, like in terms of our love for anything, if it be like what business or what industry that we're passionate about. In your case, it's your passion for film and media, right? And then kind of like corresponding that with our understanding of the world. I think that like applies to everything in our life, right? Just kind of meeting, where we get to meet in the middle, and like understanding from both perspectives is so crucial. And just speaking about your love for film, I want to take it a step back and talk about just a little bit about your upbringing and like how you kind of got into this world of producing and writing and filmmaking. And what was your upbringing like? Like what was your family like? What kind of led you into getting into this opportunity of, writing and producing?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for sure. And let's be honest here, being Asian American and in like the entertainment space is extremely difficult. There's a lot of gatekeeping going on. In fact, we feel like you sort of just pushed in and made your own space. We love it, right?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, it wasn't easy. I can't tell anybody right now with a straight face and say like, oh yeah, it's just keep going, just keep going. It's such a generic kind of advice, right? Like you'll be fine. No, there were plenty of times that I felt like, should I hang it up? Should I, like, it doesn't seem like there's a space for me right now out there in this world. And I did, right? I did it in a way that stepped away from the acting side of things, but that opened the door up to go after producing and directing and writing professionally. And that was, in its own thing, a blessing in disguise. But to take it back a little step further, my mother was born in Osaka. My father was born in Hong Kong, and they met in Lewis and Clark, a college in Oregon. And they had nothing to do with art. Like they were more business oriented. My father, he was working as he was basically a business consultant for a pretty big firm, accounting firm, and I was just like this like small little Asian guy who just like I watched Jean-Claude Van Damme videos. I watched Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. This is what I want to do, very naively. And that was sort of my world at the time. Performing was my thing. I loved to dance. So that was my first real love, acting and performance, right? That was the first thing that really, really drove me towards the storytelling world. And it was only until I started to just pick up a pen and a pencil somewhere around like, I don't know, probably my early teens, like my 12 or 13, I just started jotting stuff down, writing stories. And I remember writing a very, very, very terrible script when I was a freshman in high school, thinking like, this is so cool. I wrote like a 30-page script. Like, look at me, y'all. Had a pretty cool font that I used on word art, and made up a title page. And I was like, sick. Yeah, look at me. Gosh, I want to pull that somewhere. It had to do with like Asian gangs versus white gangs. Keep in mind, Calabasas, y'all. Calabasas. This is where I came from. Just like a simple, like middle-class neighborhood. So I had no idea what I was really writing. But from there, yeah, like I got far more into, like, I got my SAG card at a very early age. For SAG is the union that you join for actors. And so I was doing that for a good while. I took a break during high school, and then I went to New York for college. And as soon as I came back, I went right into it. I went right into the acting, got an agent, but I couldn't get like a theatrical agent. And that specifically means that I can only audition for film and TV stuff if I have a theatrical agent. And I only had a commercial agent. So vis-a-vis, I could only audition for commercials. And it really didn't feed my soul. It was really soul sucking, honestly. And it got to a point where I was sitting in a room in a casting office with a bunch of people who look like me. And I was like, I do not want to be here right now. And that was a huge telling thing, right? And especially in your 20s, these moments can feel so big and so like they feel so much weight on you. And not only that, in your 20s, particularly for me, and so I don't want to project that, but from what who I've talked with, this is kind of true too. But we're often looking to our left and our right a lot in our 20s, seeing what other people are doing, see how my friends, and again, my friends who are, all where we all grew up together, none of them are in the business. So they're all like, succeeding as lawyers, as doctors, as nurses, like they're getting their RNs, like they're getting all this stuff, right? And all I got was a callback. So I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. So I took that really hard break, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I started to view the business as a business. I started to look at the things of how do I take more control and agency of this business that doesn't want me right now, right? And like you said, because of those gatekeepers. So how do I find a way to get access to those gatekeepers? How can I potentially be one of those gatekeepers? How can I open those gates potentially, right? That's the big goal. And that's where it stemmed from. And full circle, I said this to Maggie, I think last week during our but my father, he was inspired in a lot of ways. He quit his job when, I was off pursuing my dreams. My sister became a music teacher. He quit his job because that didn't feed his soul anymore, and he went off to go write books. And now he's like a motivational speaker for Japanese companies in Japan, and he gets to travel there and gets to work there for like a few months, and then comes back, golfs, and gets to see the grandkids, goes back to Japan for a few months. I was like, dude, that's a great life, So in a lot of ways, I think it's interesting how like my father, he had creative bones in him. He really did. He wanted to be a disc jockey when he was younger. He wanted to run radio shows, run podcasts. If it was today, this is what he would probably want to be doing, right? So that artistic flair certainly kind of trickled down and fell onto me a little bit. And it was just cool to be able to kind of reciprocate that. And ultimately hope that he's happy too, because I'm sure he is. He gets to see his grandkids all the time, and he gets to work on that golf game.
That is amazing. That just goes to show that, anything can happen for you at any moment. I feel like a lot of the times, people want to be a creative, but they think like their cards have been dealt, and, they're at the age of, 40 and they still haven't done anything creative, but, you just never know. And it seems like your father found a lot of inspiration from you. And I think that's just such an amazing story.
Shout out, the great thing you said that, like, honestly, shout out to the people who, aren't afraid to take those leaps and bounds whenever they are at a stage in their life. I have a friend of mine, Bushra. She quit her corporate job just like last year, 2 years ago, to pursue acting and this world full time. And she's starting to see like just even levels of success there. And she's really pushing for it. So again, it's like, if you really love it, if you really want to do it, it doesn't matter when, just do it. There it is. I said that generic do it thing again. Oh boy. I did it.
We should ask Nike to sponsor you. Just
yeah. For that reason, I'll happily take that. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I really like the fact that you brought up like this is a blessing in disguise. Most of the time when we face adversity and failure, we're just like, oh man, a lot of us just give up, right? But the fact that you took some time to reflect upon yourself, which is super important, right?
Right.
Because the thing with any sort of form of success is that it's not a linear path. It's an up and down path. And the fact that you were persistent enough to realize that this is still something you want to do. And now look at what you're doing, right? You're creating space for more people to get into this world because of certain experience that you felt before. So I just want to highlight that moment that, regardless of how bleak things look in life, you can always change it around and flip it around. It just depends on your perspective.
Yeah. Perspective is a big part of my life these days. Like how you view the world and how we can how you view adversity, right? I just thinking about that. There were certainly times I used to do every side hustle job you could think of, like every single one. I bartended, I waited tables, I would take freelance jobs here and there. I became, and that's the fun part, is that I actually became stronger in that world because of those freelance gigs, right? Freelance editing, freelance videography. I just became stronger in the fields that I wanted to work more closely in anyway. So those are important from a hustle standpoint. But I did other jobs too. That was just like I was doing delivery jobs for a while, and I remember, oh man, it's amazing what the universe kind of can do in the weirdest ways if you trust and you still believe in it, and if you're dedicated to it, right? And if you are open to the things, you'd be surprised at what the universe can offer you. And I remember sitting in my car doing a delivery, and I remember I was nearly about to break down because I was like, I think I gotta like keep doing this for a good while, because if I don't get like a gig soon, I gotta get more shifts or something, right? And the next day I booked something, and it was a great job, right? So it's amazing that in those moments, like I go back to even a story with like Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad. I don't know if y'all know the story, but right, like very similar thing happened. He was so close to leaving the business. He even told his mom, "I'm about to bounce," and the mom was like, "No, just stick around for a few more months. I'll give you rent money. Just stick around." And then he got Breaking Bad, and even then, Vince Gilligan had to fight to keep him on that role because the producers didn't want him. So again, it's just the universe will work out in the craziest ways. But the big but is that manifestation does not work by you just sitting on your couch manifesting it. Manifesting comes by you waking up every day with intention and trying to do what you want to do as effectively as you can, but while also trying to maintain a work-life balance, because you're creating your own luck. And through creating your own luck, the universe will listen at some point. That's my thought on that.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up because I feel like nowadays on social media, we romanticize manifestation so much, but then they leave out such a big part of it, like everyone says just manifest it and everything will come true. But it really is, on top of manifestation, you really just have to do the work, right? And it's so important that you brought that up. And just like speaking about mental health and you saying like, the universe working itself out, right? I think like especially when we're at our lowest of the lows, we tend to look for opportunities even more so than we normally do, right? Maybe our eyes widen up, maybe we're just like super focused on looking for those opportunities. So I think like for a lot of people, when we are at our lowest, those opportunities do come because we are searching for them. Yeah. And then, you talking about your mental health, you feeling like you were super down during that time, especially with like dinner party, just, you having those conversations about race and gender equality and classism. Those are very, very heavy topics, right? And I'm pretty sure it gets very daunting sometimes to talk about those conversations. And I want to know like how you are managing your mental health right now too, just having those conversations so often.
Yeah, I guess I want to say a few words about what you said earlier. Everything you said just really hits home. Truth be told, I think a couple of days ago, I was sitting there. I was like, man, this entrepreneur stuff is so hard. Like I started questioning everything. And I feel like when you're at the bottom, like, yeah, you're right. If you want enough, like the universe sort of guides you in the right direction. Like even today, finally felt like I had like a mental break after talking to like my mentors and advisors. I'm like, wait a minute, there's a lot more clarity in what I need to do, right? And it's hard to describe in this podcast, that feeling of like desperation, where it's like you just want to sit there and you don't know who to blame but yourself, and you're just really hard on yourself because you're just like, it's not working out. Like you're just thinking, just your mind just goes wild, right? You just start thinking about like things you could have done correctly, or like life would be so much better if I had a full-time job or stuff like that,
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's like there's this gut feeling, this fire within that says, shut the hell up, just do it, stop complaining. It'll work out. Why are you complaining, right? And that's when you said that, I'm just like, fuck, it hits home for me. And I totally felt that.
Yeah, I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about just that, right? Of just it's not so much like we we we've idolized and romanticized hustle work. We haven't in some or not haven't. I don't know if this is true. Maybe I'm just projecting at this point. But how much have we hustled the mind, you know? And how much have we overdone that in some ways where it's like we've like Maggie said, right? Oh, if you just manifest and not doing the work, you know, that's enough. That's enough for the mind work right here. But you need to find that specific balance that works for you. Now that's different for everybody. You asked me, Maggie, it's like, how do you deal, right, from a mental standpoint with all these conversations that you have, especially that are daunting and heavy and not easy to have. I've for me personally really started to just count the little things, just really just like the smallest things that bring the joy to you. Take stock of that, because I noticed that the older that I've gotten, you know, if we're only measuring our successes based on big successes and big failures, whew, it's tough. That is a tough way to live. Just because you're going to be going up and down all the time doesn't mean that you shouldn't celebrate big wins. It shouldn't mean that you should learn from big failures. It just means that you need to find what's that balance for you that tries to keep you even as much as possible, so that you can tackle those challenges a little bit more, you know, even-headedly. I don't think that's a word, but level-headedly, something, there it is, something like that. So you know, if you could find that kind of balance, then I think it's easier for you to take on more, right? Like the conversations that we have today, it's like, look, I ain't got the bandwidth for this right now. I don't have the time for this right now. I think boundaries are very important. Especially as Asian Americans, we extend ourselves, you know, we're known to extend ourselves. And I don't necessarily find that to be a bad thing when it comes to like pushing yourself, of seeing like, you know, like in the Japanese term genkai, like try to get past that limit, right? Like, you know, fucking like get past that limit breaker, so then you can get to the next level, because then you show yourself what you're really capable of through trauma and stress. It's like you're pressuring that mold into a diamond, right? I think if you can find something like that, then again, you can open yourself up to more, you know, more nuances like these conversations that are not easy to have. A perfect example is you were talking about having these conversations even with my close friends from, you know, 15-20 years ago, who, by the way, that we have a group of friends here in Los Angeles. We all live in the same area, and like 12 of us, we're all hometown friends, and that's so rare to have, and I'm very aware of that. So I'm very humbled and grateful of that. But we also have tough conversations with each other every so often too. You know, during when George Floyd happened, during when, you know, with things that were happening in Atlanta, there were a lot of different hard conversations that needed to be had. And the one thing that I kind of even told them was like, look, the thing is, like, you might be my ally. You are my ally. The way that you talk to me, I know that you're my ally. I get that. But when I'm not in the room and you're talking about it perhaps with other people in your own demographic and nobody else, you have to be the ally at that point. You have to be the one that speaks for us at that point, because otherwise, you know, we're just speaking in a vacuum. The hope is, again, going all the way back to dinner parties, that the hope is that a film like this can do something like that, where it can incite that first kind of discourse, that kind of dialogue, the acknowledgement, compassion, empathy, and then from there, action. And how does that manifest?
Yeah, really powerful points. I just want to say, please take care of your mental health, because
Yes,
the way that some of the things you said is like, you start to look at the world differently, and you start to understand like how the world works, and you break it down to like, what is status quo, what is the power dynamics, what does anything society even mean, right?
But break it down, bro. I mean, like, you know, you said it the best too. What you had to do this morning was talk to mentors, to your friends, to advisors, right? The people that know you and look after you. When push comes to shove, when your mental health feels like it needs a break, those are the people that you want to rely on. Those are the people that you want to be able to just hit up and talk to and feel like you're in a safe space. And, you know, even if it means like going to therapy, like my therapist is like, I just talked to her last week, and we were talking about boundaries, and I'm like, yeah, I do need to have more boundaries because I'm really open. I really want to, get to know everybody, and I want to find the opportunity as much as I can. But sometimes you don't have that time. You don't have the bandwidth for it. So you have to set up those boundaries, and you got to be aware of that. So again, like, give yourself that time, give yourself the opportunity to talk to the people that allow you to just breathe, recalibrate, re-energize. Okay, let's go on. Let's go get this day. And not every day is going to be perfect. I think that's way okay. But I think what's really important is this is some, well, yeah. I could talk about this towards the end because I know you have this one question that you always like to ask. I've been listening to some of your podcasts, just heads up, FYI. I know you like to ask what kind of advice you might want to give. So there's something I certainly would love to share, but it all kind of revolves around what we've just been talking about anyway.
Yes, that's amazing. I'm so glad to hear that you were listening to our podcast episode. Before we get to that last question, I do want to know, aside from dinner party, and also, you can talk about the goals that you have for dinner party as well, but what are your goals, Chris, for the next year, and what's really next for you in the next, maybe 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited, nervous, definitely anxious in a lot of ways, but I have a few projects in the pipeline. As I mentioned, my partner Imani and I, we are working on a project together right now, feature film. I'm also working with James Hong, legendary, Hollywood actor. We're working on a little project, an animated feature as well. I have another animated series that I'm working on, and I'm still very development stages right now, just writing the script. So beyond that, those are like the three things that I want to do. Dinner party, I would love in a world where, distribution, like we're going through a festival run. We're going to SCAD Savannah Film Festival next week, which we're really excited about. And, once we, hopefully get to that place of distribution to get it to a wide enough audience, so then people can, talk about this and generate its own buzz. But it would be so awesome too if this film became sort of something what like Dear White People did, which was to create something that could be more anthological, but sort of revolves around, again, just simple settings with simple conversations that have very, very deep and kind of sort of profound type of dialogue that can kind of happen out of it, right? So that would be really, really cool if that did happen, where we have some ideas of it. And then acting wise, just that's the other rat race, right? Just trying to go through that. I do have an episode of NCIS Hawaii that's coming out in November or December, I think. So again, hey, I'm on the Asian Hustle Network, so that is my current hustle right now for the next few years. But perhaps from a more, I guess, like a deeper philosophical state, I would just love to be able to keep doing things that not only just like matter to me, but can be helpful, whether that's providing jobs and opportunities or providing discourse and exposure and conversation.
Love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we're just so excited for all the upcoming plans that you have. And we have, no doubt that this dinner party movie will definitely start those conversations. So we will have our last question that you're so excited to answer.
Here it comes.
Yes. And if you could give one advice to an aspiring entrepreneur or someone who, is trying to become an actor or a writer or producer, especially in, spaces like these where they're trying to start, very hard conversations, trying to promote good social change, positive change, what would that one advice be?
Just one, right? Just one. I only get one.
Only
one. So this is like really recent, and it's a very generalized and unknown theme that I think we all kind of go through. But I sort of found a way that really made sense to me in that moment, and particularly of this time. It was when I was filming in Hawaii. It was on an off day, and I was just walking outside the hotel, and I was like walking towards to get something, I remember, and I just had my AirPods in, and I was listening to this song, and I looked to this next song. I was like, oh, I think this is the song that I feel like I need to hear this song right now. And I played it, and I was like, oh no, I don't want to hear this. This isn't the song that I want. But in those like 5 seconds of deciding, I thought to myself, nah, but hold up, Chris, just go through the whole song. Maybe you need it. Just go through it. And I did. And I was so happy that I did. I was so happy that I did. And it kind of made me think about in a very simple way, right? Like this idea of what is it that you truly want versus what is it that you truly need, right? And then you always have to be able to discern those two things. And, you know, I wanted to just walk and listen to a different song because my mood wasn't that kind of feeling. But I needed that song because it was going to help shift just a little bit of something inside of me that told me, hey, my perspective has now changed on this, and that's okay. And the same kind of thing can be said about like, man, I just want to go home and take a bath and self-care today because that's what I want, right? But hold up. Is that what you need right now? Because if you can push past this part, that you might not know the ledge is just only 2 feet away, but you don't see it, but it's just 2 feet away and you don't know. What if you just take those extra 2 steps? And if you get past it, what does that tell you about your own resilience and how much character that you've built off of that? Now, I'm not discounting anything when it comes down to your own self-care and what you specifically want for yourself, but I think that's something that I felt that was something really important for me of like, oh, I've been at this place where like, oh, I just want that and I just want this and it's okay because it's what I want, right? But I didn't think about it from that place of like, what is it that you need to grow a little bit? And then the third thing that I kind of add to that was what you want versus what you need versus what people expect of you. Now, that third one can kind of tie into either one, like they're not mutually exclusive or inclusive to any of those two, but sometimes they can be, right? What you want can be what people are expecting of you. What you need can be what people are expecting of you as well. Kobe Bryant is one of my, if not my biggest motivator in a lot of ways when it comes to just, you know, a real world celebrity who truly changed my life. And he would say something where it's like, you know, there are fans out there who are all the way up in the nosebleeds who saved up all their money all year to come to a single game to watch me play. And I got like a broken foot or a broken thumb, but it's like, no, fuck that. I'm going to go there and play because that's what I need to do for them. Right. I can stay back because I want it. But so to that kind of point where it's like, there's that expectation versus the need versus the want. If you can find that right little Venn diagram of where it fits within your vision of what you need right now, not what you need tomorrow, doesn't have to be next week, doesn't have to be, you know, a week, like 2 days or 2 years from now, just be present to where you are right now and ask yourself that. Because then you might be able to have, you have all the information in front of you and you might be able to make perhaps a stronger decision that could possibly yield to another strong decision tomorrow.
Wait, that was so beautiful. Like you said that so eloquently and that made so much sense. And I mean, I definitely agree with you. Just finding that right balance. I mean, it's not easy, but you really have to go find that right balance between those three things and, you know, just do it. Just do what you believe is right.
You definitely been listening to our podcast. This is
a
a well-prepared answer.
No, it's funny. I haven't actually said that really anywhere elsewhere either. So it honestly was so fresh. It just happened to me like a few weeks ago. And I was like, whoa, it did not so Keanu Reeves like, but like, whoa, just had a moment there, you know, and it's so simple. We all go through it every day, but I felt like it made a little bit more sense today when we are prioritizing things to take care of ourselves, which is very, very important. But I also think that don't lose yourself in the process of this business, because this business will not wait for you either. The business does not necessarily care if you are self-caring right now. You know, that's just cold hard truth in a lot of ways. But you can certainly find people within the business world that will care about it. And those are the people that you obviously want to be gravitating towards, because you're still trying to get out, you're still trying to come up. But you know, if you could do it with the right people, with the right mindset, nothing's going to stop you.
Absolutely agree. Love it. Thank you so much for sharing that, Chris.
Yep.
So where can our listeners find out more about you and how can they support Dinner Party?
Yes. So you can follow me at Chris Naoki Lee. That's just across the board from Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Sadly, I don't have a TikTok out there from people out there. Sorry about that.
You have to get a TikTok, man.
I know. I was thinking about getting a TikTok for my dog. Is that bad? Is that okay?
No, it's a start.
All right. Oh, Brian, I feel like that's a slippery slope that you know about. You're like, just do it. Just start with the dog first and see how you go from there.
Yeah, you're gonna fall deep into it hard. It's a great distribution.
Oh, great. And also for Dinner Party, you can follow it on Instagram at Dinner Party Movie. And yeah, we got some festivals lined up. We have, again, at the end of October, we'll be in Scad Savannah Film Festival. The week after that, we'll be in Portland Film Festival. And then we have a couple more as well that we're about to announce as well. So
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chris. It was awesome having you on our podcast. Thanks so much for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you,
thank
Chris.
you so much. Thank you so much for having me, and keep hustling those people, keep inspiring those hustlers out there. So
You will. Thank you.